Well, and what's interesting is what used to cause some change or at least hold people accountable to certain behaviors was the culture at large kind of were in agreement on what they expected of fellow citizens, and everybody was kind of on board. We all kind of agreed with the same principles, right? And what I learned and what you've learned, and all of us who are trying to pay attention, is that once the culture goes rogue and decides to make things up on the fly and make up this new world of identifying and pronouns, and basically a fantasy world that everyone must live with simultaneously. Because I always said, I mean, you saw me do my comedy. I've said within my comedy, I said, listen, you live in America. If you want to live in a fantasy, you can, but you don't have the right to make me live there with you. That's the problem.
Uh-huh.
And so we
Right.
sit here in a culture that now says that we don't want to hold anybody to a standard. It's all kind of white, anyways. It's this sort of manufactured standard of culture that is really Eurocentric and has very specific colonial perspectives and supremacy and whatnot. So we're not going to hold anybody accountable. And then they would say to me, and I watched it happen, well, listen, we're progressives. I mean, not that long ago, people don't believe in gay marriage. And then look how much people have changed their mind. And I'm like, nobody changed their stinking mind. You bullied people and basically told them you're not going to survive, live, work, be safe, be okay, and be given any kind of dignity for dissent until people just gave up and said, okay, will you leave us alone? Can I be free for a second if I let you have your stinking thing? And so it's all a facade. The left has never persuaded anybody to do anything because their ideas are stupid and cancerous. No, Marx never
Yeah.
persuaded people to do anything because nobody would be stupid enough to give up their agency for a self-elected elite who control you by describing that they're setting you free. How stupid do you have to be to live like that? And that's what we've done. And so that is just transferred over into the black community because as a human, forget white, I can observe that, 90% of the men in prison don't have a dad. That's just the way it is. That's a part of the deal. They didn't have a man giving them a role model, teaching them to be respectful, how to treat a woman, and so they grew up sort of, emulating the pimp or the local this and that, the wrong people, and they become the culture that were aware of. And so I think what you said is true, but I think it's virtually impossible, Heather, because the other parts of our community, the white people or even the leftists who supposedly care about these people, are never going to hold these people accountable to anything and expect them to act in a certain way, which would actually help them. And thus, there is no impetus for people to change because nobody's going to demand it of them. There's no discipline ever expected from somebody from the left. No self-censorship, no sense of humbling oneself or seeking a higher order of things. That's all off the table now. You do what you choose. It's systemic narcissism. Whatever you choose becomes truth and reality, and everybody else to bow the knee. But then they start creating words and terminologies in lieu of the fact that they can't change people's behavior or hearts. As a Christian, I believe it's the heart. So they start using terms to replace depth. For example, and I think this is kind of at the root of everything that you do with the diversity delusion and your new book, When Race Trumps Merit, they start making up these words that really don't even mean anything. For example, whiteness. Whiteness. Well, that's white. It's whiteness. Well, whiteness does that. And I keep thinking to myself, when has a color ever done anything? When has a color ever accomplished anything or invented anything? Because the color is simply a hue, a shade. Ideas, thoughts, minds, they do things, but not colors. So you're an expert on this. So let's start with the basic premise of what really is the corrupt problem with the West: whiteness. What the heck is whiteness?
it's a tautology.
Yeah,
Whiteness is simply everything bad. It's tantamount to the West. The West is white, white is West, and therefore both are evil. And again, I just have to stress, Brad, and you know this, but we can't forget it. This is really perverse. This is not how civilizations have ever behaved. They have celebrated their accomplishments. There is something weird that has happened to Western civilization. And I will say, it is, I'm actually going to use white. White people, it seems, some of them are self-canceling. They're on a suicide mission. I think the great replacement is real. They really are trying to say, to the extent that America's roots are European, we were demographically Caucasian. That's just the way it was. Africa was demographically Black. China was demographically. There's nothing inherently good or bad about any of those. We were white. Okay. So, but it is white people that are going around falsely labeling themselves as responsible for all the world's problems when the opposite is the case. The world's problems are being solved exclusively thanks to Western science, constitutional government, ideas of limited government, equality, tolerance. Those are all exclusively Western ideas. What is driving this? Again, I'm just going to repeat that I think in the American context, it comes out of belated guilt about race and the fact that we have a racial problem still on our hands after decades. The rest of the West kind of is piggybacking on that. They're trying to simulate similar structures to America's race problem with colonialism and their third world immigration there. But it is absolutely bizarre. And you alluded earlier in the discussion to the facts of why don't they listen to facts? Why don't facts matter? Well, that's one reason that they have to engage in censorship, where they are trying to exercise government control over what's on the internet, with whether it's regard to one of your great topics, the COVID frenzy, the COVID hysteria, the COVID self-destruction of the economy and of childhood, or other aspects of the world. They can't handle the marketplace of ideas, which John Stuart Mill said is the great truth-telling mechanism. You should be, if you really believe you've got the truth, test it. You should be grateful for the opportunity to get out there in the marketplace of ideas and debate the other side. They will not allow that to happen, which tells you something. Anybody on campus who disagrees with the ubiquitous racial preferences will be silenced. Anybody who says that a 5-year-old girl cannot choose to be a boy simply because her teacher has encouraged her to do so, or who says that parents have a profound, fundamental, non-defeasible right to know what is going on with their children. They are the ones who should be involved in their children's upbringing, not the LGBTQ bureaucracy at the child's elementary school. They will not debate that. And that shows that they are absolute cowards and have no confidence deep at heart. Although, I think we always like to project onto our opponents that, well, in their heart of hearts, they really don't think this. Actually, I take that back. In their heart of hearts, I think they really do believe that. But nevertheless, they now control the reins of power, and they're not going to allow anybody to dissent from their orthodoxy.